Agricultural investment in the African continent. That's the discussion in this episode of the Business of Agriculture. Hey, Damian Mason here with a question before we hop into this episode of the Business of Agriculture. If you farm for a living, you employ a lot of amazing technology, from your inputs that you put into the soil to the tractor that you sit in, your combine, and the amazing data that it harvests. But has your soil analytics kept up technologically with everything else in your farming operation? I would venture to say that no, it is not. Sure, you check for your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potassium, your micronutrients as well. But what about disease pressure? Do you know what diseases and what pests you're going to face next year? No, you don't. But you can now figure that out with Pattern Ag's predictive analytics. Think about it. They can tell you now with testing what the likelihood of facing nasty diseases, things like cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome, what the likelihood of you having this in your field. Then you know how to prepare, how to treat, and where to invest your money. It's using technology to make you bigger yields and therefore make you bigger money. Go to www.pattern.ag to learn more. They are pioneering the way in predictive agronomy. Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of the Business of Agriculture. We're talking about African agriculture and investing in African agriculture. You know, we've been hearing for a number of years about the potential of Africa. Over 1 billion people, it's still got a growing population, vast amounts of territory, vast amounts of natural resources. Is it an opportunity for North American ag as a customer, or is there an opportunity for North American capital, money going to Africa and being deployed in production agriculture? That's what the guys are talking to me about today. I've got the Acres Club on here. Acres Club is an entity, an investment entity, if you will, that's going to Africa and deploying capital into production agricultural enterprises and projects in Africa. This is not some non-for-profit. This is not Peace Corps. This is a for-profit thing. This is a capital going there, and I want to talk about those opportunities and a bigger picture of these kind of things, where we might be able to deploy money and what might end up coming from this. Will it make certain countries of Africa a customer of American agriculture? Lots of stuff to cover and dig into this. Also, we're going to talk about capital in general, as well as all the great things that could be happening in Africa. So lots and lots to cover. From Acres Club, I've got Brandon Clymer, Carl Steinmann, and Jeff Bordes. They are with the company called Acres Club. So anyway, Jeff, I think you're kind of the lead off on this, and you and Brandon were on my Business of Ag Success group talking to our Ag Network. And I said, you got to come on this show and talk to people about this. What are you doing?
Damian, it's good to be on your show. And the last time we had a great insightful discussion and we kind of went a little deep. So it's good to be back and to share what we're doing. And what we're really trying to do is to capture an opportunity. As you know, there's a lot of, it's been a growing whisper where Africa is the next place for agriculture. And we think now is really the best time. You see, we have a doubling of population in just one generation. 60% arable land, and we have acquired a large chunk of land, about 25,000 acres. And we put in my team and I, my partners and I, or GP partners, Brendan and Carl. We think right now is the best time to enter Africa and to start farming, especially what's going on with Ukraine now, which impacted Africa the most as far as food availability. So we see it as a short-term benefit and a long-term play. So yeah, that's why we're here, and we want to hear and kind of expand the awareness of what's going on in Africa and help your listeners see the opportunities and hopefully jump on the bandwagon.
Got it. So Carl, you're the one that I haven't met yet. What's your role there at Acres Club?
Sure. Well, I am the chief operating officer here, and I've helped put our fund in place. So there was just a lot of due diligence that we had to do on behalf of our investors, put that all together, get all of our legal documents up and running, and then launch the fund, which we've launched just a short time ago. And I've had some great success because I also double as capital raiser as well. So I've been reaching out and meeting with potential investors, whether it's high net worth individuals, certainly all accredited investors, and then and several institutional investors that are really interested in deploying capital in Africa.
Yeah. So the question, and by the way, Brandon, you were on before. Your you talked about the actual operation. I want to get into all that, but we've seen this in agriculture, where there's a lot of outside money coming in, and it's been a lot in ag tech, less in things like this. What's the environment like? Whoever wants to take that, I guess. I don't know if that's Brandon's question or not, because Brandon, your role is a little bit of everything, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I wear multiple hats. For one, the face and the looks of the company, that's a major player. Then also the operational needs. So as far as the day-to-day operation, working with our farm managers in country, and all of our ground game. So really you see the ag tech, and that's a lot of the AI and everything that you see just with any tech that you're investing in. And those are high reward, high risk. Those companies will come in and not make money for 10 years and nobody really cares for some weird reason. Versus here, it's back to the basics. So Africa has a exploding population and a rising middle class, but they don't have the advanced agricultural techniques that we have here in the United States. And so that's where the unique opportunity lies.
In general, population, I've covered this a number of times. If you're a new listener, go and check it out. I've covered with the author of Empty Planet. I've covered with my friend Todd Thurman about the demographics. Globally, we are stagnating in general. Western cultures and developed economies like Europe, the United States, Canada, we're almost starting to revert. And if it weren't for immigration, we would be reverting in terms of our population. There's only like 12 out of 200 nations that have a high a birth rate, if you will. And I believe that almost all of them are in Africa. Of course, there's still high infant mortality in many of the African countries, but the promise of population growth as an agricultural driver has been a thing for the last 100 years in agriculture, except for the last few years. And I tell my ag audiences, don't count on population growth to continue to need more bushels. It ain't happening. Hell, it ain't been happening for a number of years. That's why we've invented ethanol or soy diesel or whatever those things are, or CRP programs. It's not the case in Africa. Africa is the last place where we still have this ascendant population. And the next question is, they've had this before, and whoever wants to take this question, but that doesn't mean that they've been able to purchase our product. We've had ascending population growth in Africa for the last several decades since I became an agricultural guy. We also had bushels. We could have sold them versus growing them there, but they didn't have the money. So do the economics of Africa favor this? Population does. Growth potential, maybe, but it's all driven and predicated on economics. And one question I think any investor would have, or anybody that's just hearing you out would say, are the economics of the African continent? And I know there's 50 some odd countries, very different from one part of Africa to another in terms of the countries. In general, who wants to speak to the economic situation?
Yeah, so I'll touch on that, and then probably Jeff will jump in too. But so you nailed it on the head. So it's a massive continent, and so we're talking generalizations. You're going to have different pockets that have different businesses and people are fleeing versus going. So in particular, for instance, where we're in business in Zambia is a very structured, safe country. It doesn't have rebels, things like that. It has a long standing history of letting foreigners come in and do business. So that's a great place for us to start. And what you've seen in the past is so much immigration into other countries. And what you're starting to see develop is people are staying there and, establishing roots and growing and staying there versus trying to get out as soon as they can. And you're even seeing a lot of people going back to their home countries from the Europe and the United States simply because the way that politics are, people don't like how they have to raise their kids and this, that, and the other. And so that's a big indicator that we see. And just looking at the numbers, the projections. So, I was reading the stat here. So from 2021 to 2035, or from 2035 to 2050, Africa's share in the increase in population of our planet will already be at 76%. And so it'll be the largest contributor to population rate in the world.
Okay. Now, you hit on something that Jeff, speak about the economics, and then I want to go country specific because he brought up the Zambia thing. So if you would, please.
Yeah. So the main thing when we look at the number, but Africa as a region is second to beyond Asia, at 3.8% growth. And the average world growth, by the way, is 3.2%. So you see a pretty decent gap in terms of potential growth. And as Brendan mentioned—
Is that economic growth or population growth?
That is GDP, economic growth.
Okay.
From a GDP standpoint.
So the whole entire continent, if you use the whole continent,
that's
you
right.
got a 3.8% GDP year over year.
That's right.
And by the way, that means that a few of the countries must be pulling a hell of a sled up the hill, because there's also a few of the countries that are really nowhere close, I'm sure, to the 3.8% growth rate. But that's just my speculation.
Yeah, the 3.2 is an average. So there are people who are way behind that number. Yeah. So those two things, population growth and a growing year over year GDP, and a fast growing middle class, tells us this is now the time. And I would never compare the region to China or like as being the next China, because there's a lot of infrastructural limitation. However, from a purely agricultural play, there's a lot of economic opportunity there. Hence why we decided to start there and let the region expand the appetite of what's available on the ground.
Got it. All right. We haven't heard from our friend Carl for a minute, so we're going to go to Carl. He's just, I mean, I like him. He's polite. And I don't like most people, to be honest with you. But Carl,
thanks, Damian. I appreciate that.
You're growing on me. I want to talk a little bit about the economics, and then I also want to talk about how this works. So we're going to get into the you said COO, maybe that's you, and then we'll go to who all around the table on that one as well. Before I do that, dear listener, if you are a Midwesterner, there's a pallet program that you really should consider, and you should consider this coming from Redox. Redox, my business partner here in the year 2024. They came on to sponsor this show. I've been to their headquarters in Burley, Idaho. You really got to consider this. They have a special pallet program for Midwest corn and soybean growers, providing breakthrough nitrogen optimization with a product called RDXN. It's in addition, they'll get that product in addition to two of their flagship products, Banks, BANX, and Mainstay. You can find out more at redoxgrows.com/Midwest. But the point is, it's a biostimulant and plant nutrition product. So premium plant nutrition with the added benefit of biostimulants. No one does it better than Redox Bionutrients. It's a family business, been around for 30 years, started in specialty crop, moved into turf, and now capturing more and more broadacre agriculture. You really ought to consider this. If you've never heard of them, check it out. Redoxgrows.com is the place to go. All right. How does this work? I give you money. Then what?
So what we're going to do from deploying capital is we're going to acquire the land that we've already put a deposit down. So finish paying off the land. We are in the process of titling traditional land. So that's, I guess, one of our secret sauce, right, is getting access to traditional land and then being able to title this land so it's protected. And there's current acts within Zambia that protect ownership, and how it works in Africa and every country is 99-year leases. So it would be a 99-year lease, but we're protecting that asset and that capital that's deployed. So it's going to be acquiring 25,000 acres of land, and then, of course, investing in the infrastructure of building our farm operation. That includes equipment, clearing, fencing, of course, security, full staffing, and ultimately our planting operation. And right now our plan is to harvest 15,000 of those acres. The other 10,000, we're kind of waiting until we get our first harvest and figure out what we're going to do with the next 10,000. I mean, it's obviously quite a bit of land. We've got rivers that run through this land that never get dry. So picking the right locations for our operation is important. And ultimately, how our investors get a return on that capital is through distributions of from harvest. And of course, all of our economics are based on the current yields. And what we did, we took a very conservative approach to our yields in terms of the amount we could harvest per acre. And then the market price, we took a delta, took a very conservative approach on what that would look like. It's since gone up because of the drought that's in the region that has really driven the price up in all the grains. And right now we've planning on growing maize, which is their largest consumed crop. soybeans and winter wheat is in the plan today.
Sounds like a farm in Indiana. Okay. So, but it's not a farm in Indiana because you've got various other considerations. So you bought this land, or buying this land. Is it bought? Is it acquired? It's being acquired.
In the process of, yes.
All right. And this is all from one seller, and the seller is a tribe.
Correct.
Okay. And then the first thing that my person that's driving down the road right now in Nebraska in their company car is saying, "Oh my gosh, what about title? What about is this?" Because we've always heard horror stories about, okay, these other kind of countries, whatever. Zambia is very, and I've heard it from Jeff and I've heard it from Brandon. Zambia is very stable. You're not worried about the politics or the government having a problem with that, right?
Not at all. I'll let Jeff take this question because it's a beautiful story on how we entered this market. And, how are the three guys on your podcast get an opportunity to negotiate with tribal leaders for a massive amount of land, right?
Who made the decision, Zambia?
Well, Zambia chose us 12 years ago.
Okay.
My background is in education. I built software for universities and colleges, Damian. And what we do is we help schools expand without having to build infrastructure. And a client came and found my company because he got a degree in Hawaii. And he basically said, "You have to come to Zambia." Anyway, he wired us the money before he knew we could deliver. And that's how we discovered Zambia. And it took us 2 years to figure out the landscape. And because we built an authentic relationship with the local population, everyone goes to Africa usually for mining, to explore and get out, right? And our interest was really how to educate and make an impact. And because of this, I've been able to create a meaningful long-term relationship. Matter of fact, when the land was offered to us, it wasn't something that I really was excited about because I didn't know what to do with so much land until we all got together. And we're like, well, there's something there, meaning we're feeding people's mind. Why not feed their belly? Because no one's going to learn when they're hungry, right? So, and that's how the entire thesis developed.
Okay, so that's a neat one right there. So you're in the African continent, and you're in Zambia in particular. Which, by the way, if you're listening to this, Zambia, I would call it South Central. Is South Central. It's a landlocked country. Does not have a coast. It's north of South Africa by, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 miles, maybe. I mean, very large countries over there. The language they speak is there. How many people speak English in Zambia?
English is the main language. All formal business and education is done in English. However, they have a lot of tribal languages that are not practiced. So everyone is, because of it's a former British colony, everyone speaks English that is educated. So if you're going to do business in Zambia, unless you start interacting with the rural area where you might run into the different tribal languages, but there are 7 main tribal languages. However, English is the main language for all government or business transactions.
Got it. And there's a stability, and then there's the English aspect of it. So this all works. So you were presented this opportunity. Hey, you know what? You're over here, Jeff. So this tribe wants to sell off 25,000 acres. Of course, the first question is, well, why do they want to sell it? Why do they want to sell it to me? If I buy it, are they going to remember that they sold it? Are they going to still just be out there running around and doing their thing and forgetting it? There's some questions that go up. I'm sure there were for you.
Yeah. Well, I knew the chief very well, done some stuff together, especially now we're doing some stuff to bring higher education into the chiefdoms. Because most of the chiefs are very wise as far as the land. They have like a lot of traditional knowledge that none of us can access. However, when it comes to formal education, there's a huge gap. So we've been working with the government to bring them up to par. There are a few chiefs, of course, with doctorate degrees, but you can say 90% of them are very traditional. They can tell you how to find water just by the wind, sound of the wind. However, getting them into kind of like bridge the gap between the traditional values and the modern values has been something we've been very, very keen on, because a lot of time the traditional rules are conflicting with educating the youth, right? You have young girls getting married early. So we're like, let's go to the top. And once we show them why we're there, then it can make our job a lot easier. So because of this, Damian, for over a decade, I've been building a relationship with a lot of the tribal leaders. And when the land came, it was more of a gift in terms of like what was given. So for us, at first I rejected the offer until Carl and I and Brendan got together and we're like, hey, there's so much more that we can do on this land. There's farming potential, and the whole thing opened up. So my first instinct was I would not know what to do with this land, right? And because of the titling issue, Zambia is very safe. It's a Christian nation. They're one of the first Christian nation in Africa, I would say. So we understand the words tend to follow with the action, right? So I was never concerned about that. Matter of fact, many of the farmers from Zimbabwe are now in Zambia farming peacefully. For me, what was the value? Why would I change my focus, my calling into a whole new thing? So now I can tell you Acres Club is my main calling, because I see that there's a bigger gap of impact in the land in terms of job, employment, education. Farming education is massive for us. So we see a vertical right there for my previous company. So yeah, it's a lot of excitement, where it was very hard as we spoke about it. The more we spoke about it, the more it was like, why not? And hence why we got from maybe I don't want it to we need to have it. And then getting it titled is basically what we're doing right now to ensure that the investors are inheriting titled land, not traditional land. So that way they can transfer it and they can also leverage it as an asset, tradable asset.
Got it. So on this front here, Brandon, let's go to you for a minute. Your job is to what? Get those acres planted? You're not
pretty much, yeah.
Planting the acres.
Yeah. So essentially, like, Rockefeller or Andrew Carnegie, when, he built US Steel, it's bringing in the right partners to create that. And so that's what my main thing is. So I have a national design build firm. And so developing is kind of a big thing. So the country of Zambia is actually doing a planned capital city. And our land is adjacent to it. So as that city grows and gets built out, the land will appreciate. But in the interim, we're like, well, how can we create cash flow while that's happening? And so that's how we came up with this system. And at the end of the day, I mean, bringing in the guys to actually put the seed in the ground, dig the holes, that's the kind of the littlest part. The biggest thing is running a business. That's what's the lacking over there, which is where we kind of tail into the education piece with Jeff's company.
Okay. So you're thinking that the play here is you get these 25,000 acres. Do you mind me asking, what do we pay for the 25,000 acres?
Well, we just had it valued.
Yeah, 12.5, is that right?
Yeah, 12 million.
$12 million. But you're not in it for $12 million. But you've got a value of $12 million, but you're not. Your asset value is $12 million US.
Right. Because it was tribal when we got it.
Right. So you're not really in it for much in terms of your acquisition price.
Correct.
That's right.
Okay. And then you got improvements to this. When you that 10 or 15,000 acres that starts being farmed, it'll be worth more when it actually has crops on it? Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. So then the play is you can take something that you don't have much in it for and make it worth a lot more.
That's right.
Do you sell it? Is that what I'm hearing? Is that what the plan is?
Well, there's multiple exit strategies. So private equity comes in and purchases it. That'd be great. It appreciates and we sell it off in chunks later. Refinance, pull a bunch of money out. So there's multiple exit strategies when you have a operating business producing cash flow like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. So there's a whole bunch of these, and then part of it's going to be development. She said the biggest town in one of the bigger towns in Zambia.
So Zambia's capital is currently Lusaka. They've got a planned new capital, just like DC was a planned capital. So they're building a new one, and that was a big reason. Looking into this exact location is because we bought the land on the border of that new city. So as that gets built up, I mean, just like any other farmland, urban population growth is going to come in and they're going to offer you stupid amounts of money for the acres to put a building on it.
Understood. Yeah. Okay. What about improvements to make this an actual farm? The pioneers lived really, really short lives. They had to chop down trees and try and grow crops and keep the critters from eating them, and then also keep from dying from yellow fever. What's it going to take to make this go from bare ground, forested, savanna, whatever it is, to a cornfield?
So essentially, I mean, right now we're in the clearing process. So just taking raw land and clearing it, taking out all the trees, grubs, whatnot, and then it's from there. It's doing big crop circles and creating. Okay, where what is our crop rotation going to be, and how we move there. So as far as the infrastructure of it, that's all machine and manpower based. And then as far as power, water, we've got water on site, with a river. And then you're
going to require irrigation? This requires irrigation?
It doesn't. So we're fortunate in the area that it gets plenty of rainfall, so we don't really require irrigation. Like, for instance, they've had a huge drought in the south of the country right now, which has caused a spike in prices. And fortunately, our area is not suffering from that, so we don't need it. We plan on instilling that in the future, but it's not a necessary to put out a crop. I mean, it's just more along the lines to get more efficient and increase the yield.
Got it. I want to hear more about now the development and the actual ins and out of this. Before I do, I want to talk to you, dear listener, about Truterra. With crop revenue being projected to be where it is in 2024, you got to look at diversification of revenue. Sustainability programs are an absolute thing that is coming. We're talking about carbon intensity scores. We're talking about various sustainability programs that will pay you money if you own acres, if you farm acres. You can get paid for sustainability programs. Have you looked at Truterra? Truterra is focused on supporting farmers at every stage of the sustainability journey to help plan, make, and maintain regenerative management practices that will improve agronomic, economic, and environmental sustainability for your operation and for your long-term financials. You can find the right program for your field by going to TruterraAg.com, TruterraAg.com, part of the Land O'Lakes companies, TruterraAg.com. All right. You got the money coming in. You got this land going. The skeptic's going to say, great. They may never plant a crop. They may just put in a couple of bridges, maybe a road, and then wait until the city builds out there. But that might be a long time coming. So is there infrastructure development going on in addition to clearing land? Can you get your crops to the what the hell happens in the interim? I mean, there's a lot going on here. I mean, we hear about developing countries. Yeah, you can go out and plant soybeans over there. You can't get them out. The typhoon comes and then you can't cross the river to get to the field. Are you going to be able to make this thing work? Do you need to build roads? There's a lot of things that aren't quite ready to come together, right? Carl, Carl, hey, wait, Carl, have you even been to this place?
I have been. Yes. I was there earlier this year, or late last year, I should say. And and we took a road there. I mean, it would have been much faster taking a helicopter, but for our travels in, it was a couple-hour drive from Lusaka, and we did take a 2-lane highway, lots of trucks, mostly carrying minerals, from what I could tell, in and out to the border of Zambia and Zimbabwe. We haven't talked about it yet, but there's 2 major infrastructure projects that are happening that absolutely converge in on, or I should say close to our land. And that is 2 major developments, one being the Lobito corridor, which goes from Lobito, Angola, up through the DRC and into Zambia. And on the other side, from Zambia going east, which is heavily funded by the Chinese, are putting over $1 billion into it. And that's the Tanzera rail line. These are existing rail lines that have been there for a number of years. And they're certainly getting some new money invested on the Lobito side. It's 3 major companies out of the EU. And the U.S. is actually invested in that project. And on the other,
the U.S. government or
U.S. government,
a company from the U.S.? Why is the U.S. government investing my tax dollars in building a train in what country did you say?
Up through Angola, through the DRC, and Zambia. I mean, there's only one reason. It's the race for minerals. I mean, let's just be brutally honest here. It's the cobalt, it's the copper, it's the heavy metals, it's the military grade metals that are needed, that are all,
or for batteries,
whatever it is. Yes. Mainly the EV market is driving this 100%.
Okay.
So that is, these projects are already, have already broken ground. You can Google these and find more information about both of these projects, but it's certainly a race. And that's what it looks like to us.
Okay.
So anytime there's rail lines and a major input, that's Africa's biggest challenge is they don't have navigatable rivers for any type of transportation. Rail's the next best thing. So ultimately, with money pumping in there, that's when you'll start seeing more development around these two different.
No navigable waterways. Am I the only one that saw Humphrey Bogart's African Queen?
I shouldn't say no.
Famous movie.
It's not like the U.S. The U.S. has the best, waterway system in the world, right? So we've got opportunities galore, and in Africa, not as much. I mean, there are some, but not. It's not like the U.S. for sure.
Got it. So when you're looking at this isn't just a play. This isn't just a soybean production play. You think this is a go and occupy this and be an early. You're an early adopter, if you will. You are an early adoptee. You're early to the party, thinking this place is going to have a lot of activity because of the population, because of the stability of the government, and then obviously because of the minerals, and then this infrastructure development. Jeff, is that the compelling argument to me if I'm an investor?
Yes, that is. The long-term play is much, much more. That's why instead of throwing our investors into the blind and say, let's observe, we have things on the ground to create cash as quickly as possible. We have a 10-year strategy, but it doesn't stop there. It's just giving a safe way for investors who never been to Africa to enter the space and get an appetite for it. But our play is much, much, much larger. So food is very safe in terms of population growth, GDP growth.
Yep.
We knew that this was the easiest way to come in. Plus, we have an asset to back any. Let's say all of our numbers are wrong. We still have something to make sure that our investors are not losing. So for us, it's just the beginning of something that will be much, much, much larger.
Acres Club is a U.S.-based entity.
That's right.
And U.S.-based entities or European or wherever, Canadian, are allowed to not own property but have 99-year leases in Zambia. Is that my understanding?
Correct.
That's just how the country is in general. Regardless if you are even a local person, it's a leasehold country. So even if you're a Zambian, the government gives you 99 years that is renewable. But for you're guaranteed 99 years if you qualify, and we're qualified investors in the country, so we're able to secure assets into our company.
So you got the fields that are going to get going. Here we are. We're recording this in June of 2024. That would be their equivalent of December down there, because it's southern hemisphere. But also seasons are different. You're not talking about. I mean, it's not the equivalent of Wisconsin. It doesn't get like hard winters there or anything. So when do crops get planted? What happens moving forward?
You can do year-round crops, but basically if you were going to have a starting point, it would be the end of this year. So in November, early December is when you would do your maize crop, and then it goes through the rainy season, and then you would do your winter wheat and soybeans. And so that's your typical crop rotation. That's what we have.
Okay. And that's going to happen. So crops are getting planted in 4 months from now.
Yeah, it's 5 months, I think, or close to 6 almost. Yeah,
5 months from now. Okay, so you're going to plant crops this fall, and then who's doing it?
So we have a robust ground game. We're fortunate that Jeff's worked there for so long that we're able to do that. But yeah, we've got farm manager, 2 assistant farm managers, and then a bunch of hands and whatnot. So me, Carl, and Jeff are not going to be there with a shovel. There's a team on the ground that takes care of that.
Employees, contractual. How do you do this, Jeff? Did you get somebody to come out? You're hiring them? How is this?
Well, initially from my previous company, we have a full office there. So we've been able to segue into this, but our goal is job creation, training. We have a lot of, we want to leave a positive footprint. Again, we don't want to just be another foreign entity entering Africa and just pillaging and leaving. We think we can come out with a lot of value for investors while keeping the ground, add value, long-term value. And I think if you look at the geopolitical situation, it's actually serving our investors. Because you hear people saying, grow things in our country, create factories here.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, Zimbabwe just came in, put their foot down. Even with the chocolate going to Belgium and Switzerland, it's not happening anymore from West Africa. They're saying, well, we're going to hire expert chocolatiers. Come train us. So that story.
Wait. You spoke really quickly there with your accent. The expert what?
Well, they're hiring chocolate makers.
Chocolate makers. Chocolate
like
makers.
In Ghana,
okay. Hey, Carl's laughing. Carl's all along with me. I thought you said truckload or something, and I said
chocolatiers. He said chocolatiers. Yeah,
chocolatiers, and all right. So you're saying, the old game plan used to be just take the resources, obviously, and go away, whether it's minerals or cocoa.
That's right. Most of these countries keep about 4 to 6% of whatever comes out of the supply chain, which is peanuts. Hence why Africa is not developed. And it was designed this way. And we understand the story, but we're like, let's create a better future because whether you agree to play or not, the games are changing. So we have to basically be compliant now and start a positive relationship before the policies start being where you don't have a choice. So at least we can say we started on the right foot, not like we were forced to manufacture underground because we believe the local population has a hunger. There's a lot of case studies like Zambi, for example, is primarily a UK funded company and they're a multi-billion-dollar company. So we're not really the first doing this. And I think the reason Zambi was successful was because they had a local relationship and we want to mirror what they have and then do it a little bit differently from an American interest standpoint.
Brandon was nodding his head. Zambi, if you talked about it in my Business of Ag Success group, where you guys were guests with my ag network, but that's a British-owned beef production, huge scale, right? And then, and they run the cattle out there on the grasses, but they also have feed yards, I think, and they process in Zambia.
Yeah, they put together a really good vertical supply chain. So they do processing. They've also got storefronts as well. So they've really built that out. But it started from exactly what we have. It was a UK investment fund that came in and partnered and brought in some locals. And so now it's grown to the largest producer in the country and the surrounding countries. It's an awesome company. We love looking at it and what they've done.
Got it. Okay. I want to kind of get here rapid fire at the end. All right. I got it. I like you guys. I enjoyed you being on here. You got good information. The person that's listening to this, they're probably in the U.S. or Canada. That's where a lot of my listeners are. And they got a lot of questions still. All right. You've already spoken to the stability. Some of us are old enough to remember investment money going to Brazilian agricultural, and most of it was land. And then some of that land got nationalized. You've already spoken to that. Is there anything I missed on that topic?
Well, go ahead, Jeff.
Jeff probably the one to go with because he's got the most experience working there.
Well, our interest is for the entire region. We thought Zambia was the safest simply because of the rule of laws. They abide by the laws, and there's a strong democracy on the ground. So the idea of having land repossessed, it's very unlikely, especially if the land is titled. Yep. And if a title land is need to be used for, let's say the government has an urgency where they need to take over part of the land, fair compensation will be the so we feel very, very safe in Zambia. Our goal is eventually to extend to Malawi. And I see Zambia as not landlocked, I see it as land connected, Damian, because we are able to create a model that can feed easily 7, 8 other countries and scale quite fast.
It's the second time he's a brilliant man. It's the second time he's done this. On the Ag Network group, he did the same thing. Landlocked was my term. Land connected was his. I appreciate it. He's making sure. And 7 other countries. There's nothing wrong with that, and they're all peaceful. There's no contentious border issues. I don't think with any of them, are there?
Well, Africa is so many countries, 50 plus countries, and the dynamic, the geopolitical space is very different. And when we say 7, 8 is just potential, we will have to carefully enter each market and assess them very individually. So what works in Zambia may not work in the Congo. Congo is a little bit more conflict driven. So as we try to create verticals for our investors, we'll have to get people on the ground to make sure that we navigate this complexity. Africa is very complicated. I'm not going to come here and say it's a very simple, easy place to do business. That's why we've been there for 12 years. And most of the risks that investors should be worried about, we've mitigated them to almost zero. So hence why we are the play.
The person in Nebraska listening to this wants to know, can Zambia become a customer of mine? And I think that more projects like what's more likely, that the economy improves to where they are an importer of stuff that's grown in Nebraska, or the economy only improves well enough to take on projects like you're doing in terms of production?
Well, this is an opinion. It's not really, this is my personal opinion based on traveling. I just came back from Norway. And the last time we met was in London. From London.
That's a hell of a long, hey, that is not one of the 7 countries that border Zambia. I do know that.
Well, the one that does is Mozambique, right? And I was sitting there and I was consuming some nuts. I was buying some nuts in the grocery store, and it was made in Mozambique, right? Or made from Mozambique. So as the U.S. get back into the, we're in the fun lunch event, and then one guy came and presented, and he was saying something very, very, very controversial, if not exciting, about the manufacturing coming back to America, but in a different form, where we're looking at robotics and AI driving or manufacturing, right? Carl, you were there. So I see, as we're becoming a more sophisticated society, I think a lot of the work. So I see it becoming where Zambia is shipping things in here because it's going to be able to create it. We'll be able to produce the food a lot cheaper, and our farmers can focus on additional things like more technology-driven end products. So I see it becoming a more symbiotic relationship building where we can access cheap labor still in Zambia. We still have a large workforce. Unemployment rate is still very high. We see opportunity for us to ship the labor costs there, while the U.S. sector can create end product that technologically beyond Zambia capability at the moment. So I see the next 25 years, 50 years looking like this. That's just my personal assessment. I don't know if Carl and Brendan see it differently.
I want to go to Carl next. Carl, you've been sitting here quietly for a long time, which is one of the reasons I like you. You don't sass me. No, I'm kidding. What about those of us that've been around business for a while, and I 30 years I've been on airplanes, and I read business publications, as much as I can. You're talking about in the 90s, it was Asia. Asia's where the growth is. Asia's where the growth is. Whatever. Is Africa where the growth is?
I believe it is. We just got back from the
Are you putting your own money? Are you putting your own money into the Acres Club?
I've already put in a sizable amount of my income. A sizable investment, but I also left my corporate job after 20 somewhat years.
Okay.
And I was moved to take massive action after meeting with Jeff, and we were in a mastermind group for a long time together. And when this started to form, certainly, yes, I put in my own money. I do think there's massive amounts of growth opportunity there in Africa. We have met the most incredible people as we built this fund. Jeff referenced a fund launch group that we're a part of that helped us launch this fund, but then also some of the travels we've made into all regions of the world. We just got back from an Invest Africa conference, which was amazing. We got to hear from dignitaries, investors, major companies that are all investing in Africa, and the excitement there about the different regions were incredible. We got to hear the High Council representative from the UK, and I believe she's a native of Zambia, beautiful woman who just gave our pitch perfectly. She's never heard our pitch, which was amazing. So, I was in an audience. It was a small group. There was probably 50 people, and she was there talking about why invest in Zambia, why invest in agriculture, and she touched every one of our points. So it just gave me that.
And I want to reiterate those points because the people listening to mine this is the Business of Agriculture show. So they're saying, what are the points? Well, first off, you told me population. Then you told me they're still hungry. Then you told me there's lots of opportunity. You told me there's unemployment. It's not crippling unemployment, I think is what I'm gathering from Jeff's statement. But there's employees to do the work, but there's not crippling unemployment to where it's not the squalor. There are some very, very depressed African nations. This is not one of them. So I'm hearing that. I'm hearing that there's business friendly. I'm hearing that the government thing. So I think I've got your pitch. So then my next question is, maybe this is for Brandon or for you or whoever. I don't know. Is this the first of many? Is there another 25,000 acres after this one? 2 years from now, are you going to be calling me up saying, hey, I want to tell you about the next one. We did 100,000 acres and we're doing this, this, and this. Is that what's going on?
Ideally, we're not going to be calling and raising anything because people are going to love working with us so much. It's just going to be them calling us saying, hey, what's the next project? What's the next project? Yeah. So that's not our plan to be serial fun guys. That's not what we do. an opportunity where business people were going after it.
Yeah, you don't think you're going to have to be in a hard raise of capital situation 1 to 5 years from now because you think the thing will speak for itself. There's a Latin term that means the thing will speak for itself, and I can't remember what the hell it is because I never took law school. But anyway, I do digress. Okay, last couple of thoughts here, and then we got to go. Are there going to be grain bins? I mean, are you going to farm this ground and haul it to town until you can develop this off for condominiums? Or is this going to be a farm 20 years from now? Is this going to look like, yep, we came here and we broke the sod and by God, look at this now. This is a modern agricultural production enterprise. Jeff?
Yes and no, because we have access to a lot more land. We're thinking about the future. So the first play is agriculture. And we're going to create a top-line agriculture project. And Brendan is spearheading this, and he takes things. He's very detail-oriented. So we believe it's going to give Zenbeef a run for its money. So it's going to be a model that people are going to be modeling, and that's the aspiration, right? But we also understand that the UAE is putting a lot of money nearby our land. So again, we're not betting on that because we don't want to create speculation for just our investors. If within that 10 years, the money is invested and the land value does grow, we do see the potential to create a smart city because we're trying to get as much land adjacent to us as possible. So if we can develop more value in the land, like I said, we start with what's safe and we allow the market to dictate. As you said, 10 years ago, people were saying Africa, Africa. We understand things move a little bit slower in Africa. Hence why we're starting with what's possible right now,
which is
not what will be possible 5-10 years. That's right.
So in 10 or 20 years, part of this 25,000 acres, you think it's going to be a city that's well connected technologically and has condominiums on it?
Smart city. That's our long-term play with a farm attached to it.
Smart city meaning the government watches my every move and I just pull up there and I have a chip on my wrist and it accesses my bank account. Is that what we're talking about, Jeff?
Well, something a little bit more free. We believe a lot of our freedom is being touched on by the government, and we want to create a haven where people can come in and truly be themselves and feed and thrive. And you can see what's going on around the world. The government wants more and more and more over the
last question.
I got it. I know your chip is activated now.
We can change that, Damian, to conscious.
Last question. Question. It's happening. It's going. Yes. What's the last thing what's the last thing before the first thing, meaning the crops get produced?
The last thing is us closing the fund and planting. I mean, so everything's moving. Right now it's really just time and us getting everything moving, but it's the ball's rolling.
Got it. All right, his name is Brandon Clymer, sitting next to Carl Steinmann, who's just below Jeff Bordes. That's if you're watching it, and I encourage you to do so. This is a TV show as well as an audio podcast. You can go to the Damian Mason channel on YouTube. Just go to YouTube. I'd really like to grow my subscriber base. I've never really worked that hard at it. That's why I'm telling you, I've got to do this, and I want you to help. Go to the YouTube channel, type in Damian Mason, hit subscribe. It's free. It doesn't cost you nothing. These three guys are going to do it because I just told them to. Anyway, right. It's also on Acres TV. You can watch the TV show there. You can also listen to the podcast, share it with your friend. 350 plus episodes. Been doing this now for 7 years. I'm in my 8th year of doing this. Got great listeners just like you. So I really appreciate you being here. Always bringing you interesting topics. If you have a topic you'd like me to cover that involves an aspect of agriculture and the business of agriculture, please drop me a line and let me know. Always interested to hear from you. Thanks so much for being here, guys from the Acres Club. Good topic. When the smart city with video surveillance is going on and Jeff is in charge of everything, you can come back in a few years and talk to me about it. Anyway, I appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for being here. Until next time, I'm Damian Mason, and this is The Business of Agriculture. Hey, thanks for being here. This episode of The Business of Agriculture was brought to you by Pattern Ag. You've heard me talk about Pattern Ag because I think it's a pretty cool concept. New technology that allows you to predict the problems you're going to have and therefore treat them before those problems cost you money. What kind of problems am I talking about? Pests and disease. Things like cordon rootworm, sudden death syndrome, cyst nematode, and a whole bunch of other bad things that happen out there in the field that can cost you money. Guess what? Pattern Ag will let you find out ahead of time if the disease or the pest pressure is there, and therefore you're treating it before it costs you any money. What a great concept. Go to pattern.ag, that's www.pattern.ag, to learn more about their product, their technology, how it can make you money, save you yield, and also also where you can find a rep that can come out there and do the work for you. Pattern.ag.